Welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Let's cue the intro. This is the #1 podcast to learn marketing strategies for your board game. Whether you're just starting on your first game or an experienced designer, you've come to the right place. My name is Nalin, and let's talk marketing for your game. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Today, we are really lucky to have Bradley Field on the show, and I'm really excited for everything that he's going to be sharing with us today. So, Bradley, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So, firstly, I would love it if you could tell our listeners just a little bit about yourself and also about, how game are you, the project that you launched on Kickstarter.
Yeah, sure. So the name was designed around part of our original premise. So I guess going back just one brief step, I spent 10 years in a mortgage broking business and met thousands of couples dealing with all their kind of money issues, and realized that a lot of the time there wasn't a lot of quality communication between them on what was usually one of the biggest decisions in their life in terms of, their mortgage and their new home. So I ended up being kind of part-time counsellor to them, informal counsellor, trying to get them both to understand the money issues, the ramification, if one was more a risk taker, for them not to be the only decision maker, etc. And it dawned on me that, communication between couples was the most important thing and often lacking on certain points. So I started to develop a money game, and thinking then that how do I get people talking and communicating if they're not really a game person. So the concept of how game are you was a bit more of a tease, so that if someone said, oh, I don't want to play that game and learn more about money, then you could say, oh, well, how game are you really? You really game to give this a go. So it kind of all went back to front that way, trying to work out the name. And then a little bit of time went on and I developed the money game, and I got about kind of 80-90% of the way through it, and I had a couple of friends going through divorces and just some bad situations at home, and started kind of loosely coaching them with the skills I'd learned in the money area, just a different topic, and it all worked quite well as well. So it dawned on me that, maybe there's a couple's relationship game the same way, just about asking questions, getting people to talk, and then finding a way for it to be less confrontational and less like, darling, we need to talk. Here's 10 questions I prepared earlier, which normally would strike fear in just about every couple. So the game was created to make that process fun. The game becomes the third party in the room, I guess, so that it's not me, let's say, asking the question. It's the game asking the question, so it can be a little less personal. And I went down the path of co-creating the couple's intimacy edition, and ended up with both of them at about 90%. And then a marketing person I was talking to one day, I was talking about Kickstarter and where I was going to market, what I was going to do. And they said, well, look, you've got a money game. And basically they called it a sex game, even though it was a relationship game. And they go, sex sells more than money. You've got to launch that one first. So hence the couples intimacy one went to market first, and the money one's been sitting there still at the kind of 90% mark, and that will be one I need to finish off soon and get out there.
Got it. That's really cool with that background that you had, seeing that need and just kind of building a game out of that.
Yeah, well, and I think that's often the case, that we need to see where the need is in the market and fulfill that. Now, having said that, my particular niche is quite small. I guess a lot of board games are, unless you end up with Settlers of Catan or a Monopoly or something, then for most of us, our games are quite niche in their end market, and mine probably, very niche. But that's what I've targeted on, and that's what I'm kind of expanding on from there.
Yeah, no, that's. I'm really glad you brought up the whole niche part of the game, because I think it's going to be really interesting to learn more about how you did the marketing for it, especially during the part where you're building up a community. So, how did you prepare for your campaign in the pre-launch stage?
Yeah, well, look, my preparation and my execution, I guess, were probably two very different things. And if I had my time over again, then I would probably have spent less time on preparation and more time on execution. Because it certainly becomes a very busy time when you're actually within the campaign. So I strategized a whole lot of different marketing types, but a lot of it relied on Facebook marketing. And when push came to shove, I couldn't quite get the marketing to work well enough. It was just costing me too much for the conversion that I was getting. So all my preparation and work in that, I guess, fell down a little. I did do some market testing beforehand, before the Kickstarter on Facebook, but I was limited by that because I didn't even have a product at that stage. And I thought it's very hard to pre-market on Facebook for a game that you don't even have. And then when time came to market it on Facebook during the campaign, it was also difficult, I believe, in trying to get the conversions across the line because I was asking people to pledge for something that they were going to get 3, 4, 5 months' time. So, you know, I wish there were more experts like you around at the time that I could have used that could have probably helped direct me a little bit more in what I was doing. But certainly that particular avenue didn't work out so well for us. What I had done, though, is developed a bit of our own Facebook following, not for the game as much, again, because it was new, it was niche, it was small, and people weren't going to see much for a long time. So we weren't getting a lot of traction there, but I had a lot of friends. My wife's got a couple of thousand followers. So between our friends going out to them to say, this is what we're doing, this is what we're hoping to achieve, and this is when we'll be doing it, we kind of set the scene to get them along board as part of our community. And then when the time came for us to launch and then do a couple of pushes during the launch and at the end, we were able to go back to those people and say, look, can you just post this one more time? Can you just tell one more person? And I think that's how we personally got more benefit from Facebook in terms of the advertising there. Some of the other things we did, we dabbled in Instagram and Twitter as well, but again, that wasn't my prime focus or my personal interest. And that probably came through that if someone has a stronger interest in social media, they're probably going to be more connected to it and know ways to do it. We had spoken to a few reviewers as well, and that we've got some good reviews and they sent it out to their marketing group. And in particular, I remember Unfiltered Gamer in the US. He did a great review, a good fun review, and he had a good following. And I also paid for some extra advertising through his service. That certainly seemed to pay off, as did some of the other reviewers. There was another one, I think, Rowan at Brave New Board Games in Melbourne. It just started one off, and being a newer podcast, or not even podcast, then a blog, he was quite enthusiastic to get the message out to his friends and supporters. Meeple University as well, Stella down there. I went to a PAX conference in Melbourne, met quite a few people there, got a bit of a database out of those people. I only really got about 18 names out of there, but we sold a few from them, and I know a couple of those people mentioned us in Facebook because we got a bit of a relationship going with them. And I think the last one I had from memory, we did have our own mailing list by then, but it was only small. And the last one would have been, I had a sexologist who's basically a psychologist who had spent over 18 years looking into sexual health issues and tying that into psychology. And she went through the whole game just to make sure that everything I was doing and explaining and the questions was in keeping with their kind of psychological practices. So that was a good thing. So I was able to go back to her as well. She gave me the names of a couple of other people, and they were able to give a bit of a kind of a shout out. So look, nothing super targeted, I guess, and big, but our focus really wasn't to get a major launch. It wasn't the beginning. I was all hopeful of doing a $200,000 launch and would really help all my sales and set me up for good pricing on the print run and everything. But I soon realized that with a few of the experts that were around at the time, I would have needed all that marketing, sophisticated marketing from other people. And the fees that they were charging was, $20,000 base fee plus $10,000 this, plus $5,000 for that, plus, a big marketing campaign looking at $30,000 to $50,000. So by the time I worked it all out, if I did a $150,000 campaign, I was going to come out with near nothing anyway. So I decided in the end to, rather than go big, go kind of real for the limitations and the size we were, and test the market more than anything else. So having developed the game, I didn't really know who my niche was exactly, and I needed to try and work out, was this a real thing before I go printing thousands of copies? So Kickstarter was also used not only as a way of raising some money and getting some initial sales, but to test my market to see if, everyday people out there that didn't know me personally or hadn't heard of me, or my wife in developing it, then, would they buy it, especially on something like Kickstarter? And I figured that if I can communicate a message to them and that they were happy buying it and buying it in advance, then in some ways I was proving that there was a market for this product.
Yeah, well, that was a lot to unpack there. We talked about different kind of tactics you went through, from Facebook ads to trying to, working with friends and family to get the word out there, to reviews, all these things. And definitely Kickstarter as a place to really test out your game and also test out the reception for your game. I'd love to kind of dig in for a little bit to some of the things you mentioned. When you talk about, Facebook following from friends and family, was there anything in particular you had them do or a week before launch, right on the first day, or, 3 days down the line, things like that?
Look, casting my memory back a little bit, because, you kind of plan these things and you go, am I going to do this on that day? And then all of a sudden you realize there's something else you didn't do, or you need to do some more tweaks to your graphics, or this, that, or the other. The crowdfunding process certainly becomes quite all-encompassing once you're into it. So some of our things that I had planned as marketing happened at the end of 10 days rather than the first or the second day. But I think the main thing was a kind of soft pre-launch, not wanting to push people too much when there's really nothing they can do. It was just like, this is the game we've been developing. If anyone wants to help do a test, then let me know. And between us, just in a genuine social media kind of way, we were just letting people know what our project was. Didn't want to bombard them and didn't want them to kind of switch off from us. So when we launched, a couple of days before launch, it was a case of, oh, is this really happening? Can't believe it. We're nearly there. And then on the launch day, that was obviously letting people know, because we wanted to try and get some momentum on that first day. A little bit of a challenge being I'm based in Sydney, and a big chunk of the market is obviously in America. So trying to work out the timelines there, and a lot of our supporters are in Australian time, not American time. So thinking forward, when we launch US time, and then when's a good time to talk to our people there. So there's a bit of messing around there. But it all seemed to kind of come together enough. So probably my marketing, when I look back, there's just so many things we could have done better. And I read countless blogs from all the experts out there, but applying it and doing it was another thing. And I really wish I'd had some more support, but at the time I couldn't afford the big guys in town that I would have needed for a massive one, and there was nothing underneath that. There was no people that could kind of redirect me or hold my hand or have a kind of coaching program that I ever really found anyway, that could have helped. And I wish I had that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. A lot of the marketing agencies, like you mentioned before, like upcharge quite a bit beforehand before being able to test the market. And so I know that a lot of board gamers or board game designers kind of try to go through organic means as much as possible, like you were doing, getting friends and family, trying to build up a following on places like Facebook, things like that. When it comes to reviewers, you mentioned you reach out to multiple reviewers. Can you talk us through a little bit about that process, how long it took, how you picked reviewers, things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I'd spoken to a few reviewers at PAX Australia when I went there, and I also identified quite a few in America. Bearing in mind, my particular product is targeted kind of 25 to 40-year-old women, and certainly that's not the standard Kickstarter demographic. So I did consider Indiegogo at one stage because it's closer in my demographic, but I just believed that Kickstarter was still a much bigger market, and I just had to work harder to get to my target market. So that was kind of my first challenge, is that I think Kickstarter is a great market for most games, but where it's a younger female demographic, then it's a bit harder and more specific. So hence my going to the reviewers to try and get some of their audience as well. So I started 3 or 4 months out, made contact with a few of them. And they were interested, some of them, or I had to try 2 or 3 times to get through to them. I guess probably in hindsight, I waited until I had a proper sample game to give them, as in almost a pre-production version. And by the time that happened, and I was getting closer to the end of the year with November coming up when we launched, then I ran short with some of them. They had so many other games coming up and so many other things that some of them said, "Oh, we'd love to do it, but we can't do it until January now." So I lost some of those opportunities, and some of the other ones needed more lead time through other circumstances in their own life. So when I was looking at it thinking, oh, I've got like 12 reviewers in play, it ended up with about 3 or 4. So the lesson is certainly start early, get the relationship going with them. And in hindsight, I should have given them one of my earlier samples that was maybe 8/10 done, and explained that to them rather than wait for my final one in the prettier box and everything else, because a lot of the reviewers can work around that if they need. So that was one thing. The second thing is, express posting. Some of them cost me $100 just to send the game to them. Postage out of Australia is expensive, but I just wanted it quick and fast and secure, and to make sure they got it. Whereas probably if I'd sent it earlier, I could have just taken the risk on it not arriving and had time to send another. And other than that, it was just contacting people, being respectful of their time and giving them time if they didn't get back to me before I contacted them again. But, the reviewers are into board games even more than me. So, they're great people to put your hand out to if you can. Some of them did have paid programs that were above my budget, and some of the others had things that I did take advantage of.
Got it. Okay. You mentioned starting early, and so that you could potentially decrease postage, so you're not sending overnight delivery across the world, or and also kind of building that relationship early. So you mentioned 3 to 4 months for you. Do you think that 5 or 6 would have been good, or even more?
Look, if it's too far out, it just gets forgotten, I think. And, talking to one of the reviewers, he said that he gets 10 games a week turn up. He said most of them unsolicited. He doesn't even know who they came from. So, most of those are just wasted their time. So I do think it's important to try and build some kind of an awareness beforehand that this is what my market is. This is why I'm sending it to you. This is how I think it will tie in with your marketplace, and try and work through the reality of why you're talking to them. And again, it's because I was aware that my game was a little bit different, not in its content, because all games are quite unique, but it wasn't like a strategy game where I could say, well, this is a strategy game, 1+1 player, blah, 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 that they would understand and be able to put into a box. I had a few people at first just going, well, what's a couples game? What's an intimacy game? And, they couldn't quite see where it would fit. And for some, it didn't even fit directly into their audience. And that's where, like the Unfiltered Gamer was a very good one, where it didn't directly fit into their audience and what they were doing. But I think they were also looking to be very open to the whole market and see what they can do. And they ended up doing a great job of making some fun of it, having plenty of laughs. The way they pulled it off was a credit to their creativity. So you don't really know which ones are going to work and which ones aren't. And some people said they were going to do a review and they just never got around to it, or they did it after the deadline. So you've got to have quite a handful of people, and probably 5 or 6 months out, as you say, from my experience, probably is a good time to start talking and letting them know about things. But certainly about that 3-month mark out, which is only 12 weeks, happens pretty quick, is when you want them to have the game in hand and be able to do something about it. Bearing in mind that they might have a 6-week lead time themselves, and then they've got to turn it around into a podcast or review and then get it to you. So longer the better, but I think there's a point where it becomes too long.
Got it. No, that makes a lot of sense, the timeline that you kind of outlined just now. And with these reviews, did you were they released during the game? During the campaign, or is it before the campaign?
Sorry, when
were the reviews released? Was it before the campaign to kind of hype people up, or was it during the campaign?
Look, a little bit of both. I used the quotes from some of the reviews on my Kickstarter page. So that was kind of like a soft launch as such. But then we tried to filter them out as it went. So, the first day of the launch, it was like, hey, we just got this great review and here it is. And then a couple of days later, we put, another review's just come in, another 5-star review. How good is this? So we did use it for a bit of kind of social credibility, I guess, that other people were out there, and that we had some momentum with the campaign.
Nice. That makes a lot of sense to release it, as you kind of like go through the progression of the campaign, so that you're getting that momentum that you were talking about. And
yeah,
since we're talking like about the kind of the campaign period, can you tell me more about what are the marketing things you did during the campaign itself? Because I know it's 2 days, right, to keep the hype going.
Yeah, look, most of it was, I guess, following up some of the people that we'd met at PAX the couple of months before, the big gaming conference. It was touching some of the people again on Facebook personally that had shown someone an interest, or if they'd liked a post or something. Well, then, some of those people I went back. I didn't want to become the world's biggest stalker. And every time someone liked something that, I was there on their case. But I certainly picked the people that I knew quite well, and they had been supportive the whole time. And, just said, look, if you've got any contacts here, or can you post this out anywhere? Because different people are on different groups. And sometimes they'd say, well, look, I'm on the mums group over here, and it's not exactly their content, but I can see it would help a lot of them. So I'll go and do a bit of post there to let them know. So, we just tried to leverage off the people we knew respectfully, and just ask them for some help if they could. And some people said, look, I'd rather not get involved, or they said they would, but, we never saw anything. So we didn't really harass them after that. So, I guess it's just being aware that it's good to ask people for help, but if they can't do it, they can't do it. If they won't, they won't. We were just mindful to also not harass them or push them. And through the campaign, mostly from memory, it was the Facebook stuff. Of course, we dabbled in Instagram and Twitter as well. And the contacts we had with the sexologist and a couple of other groups like that, then we just let them know with an update. Just go, just letting you know, after 7 days, we've already got to 40% funding, and we really appreciate your help so far. And if anything else comes to mind, then let us know. But we'll let you know as the campaign comes to close. It gives us kind of another excuse to get back to them. And then, of course, 7 days out, when we were starting to get nervous about hitting our target, then it was like, oh, we're getting close to our target. Thanks for your support so far, and we hope we make it. And then, of course, give them an update right at the end. So it was a bit of a drip feed, but also, just trying to be thankful for the help they were giving and respectful for their time as well.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense there. That you're kind of finding an excuse to recommunicate and also kind of reach back out again to different groups, different people. When you're talking about conventions, about PAX, right? What kind of things did you do at PAX to kind of get the word out?
Yeah, I went down to a big conference I had in Melbourne. I got some T-shirts made that had my "How Game Are You" branding on it, and on the back it had a similar, slightly smaller, saying on Kickstarter in November, whatever the date was. And a couple of people there said, "Hey, tell me about your game." So that was good. I had a stand with one of the industry kind of associations here, groups. They had a group stand happening, and I bought some space on that. It was good to mix with some of the other game designers I hadn't met. We talked about different things on games. I met someone there as well that was very helpful in enhancing some of the graphics for me that I was working on, and basically just had a display and played the game with people, showed them some questions, discussed it. I had a sign-up form so that I just said, as we get closer to launch, can I send you some information? And if the game's great for you, then, I'd love your support. And if it's not, maybe now you've seen it, you can just let a few of your friends know. And where people said yes, then I just took down their email address and details, and they were part of our pre-launch and during the marketing campaign phase. And probably that was about it, really. I did some inserts as well, some card inserts that I got printed just saying the game is coming and this is what it's for and this is when it is. And that went in some sample bags that were down there. I paid for that. It was a modest amount, really. So yeah, it was getting out and about to make contacts within the industry, but also trying to get just some awareness of the branding, so that when time came, they maybe saw it on Facebook, and what Google's like, when you search something, then it sends everything up to you afterwards, hoping that they would just see our brand a little bit more higher frequency, and therefore we might get a better result.
Got it. And when you mentioned card insert in the sample bags, can you tell me more about what do you think it was effective, not effective? Because I know a lot of people are wondering about this particular thing too.
Yeah, look, measuring effectiveness on these things is hard. No one specifically came out and said, "Hey, I just got this card in your sample bag. This is awesome. Where can I get one?" But again, it was more the awareness of having the brand out there for them to just see it again, because particularly at something like PAX, man, oh man, you just get hit with 1,000 images and sounds every probably minute, not even hour. And you come out of there and you go, what was that thing I remembered? I really liked that, but it's hard to remember. So it really was a case of trying to make an impact if and when I saw people. I had some banners and signage up as well, so that was obvious. Even if I didn't get to talk to them, they at least got to see the name and think, "Oh, how game are you? What does that mean?" And then the sample bags was just to add that kind of third point of contact. So just trying to build as much frequency as I could of my branding in what really is a very, crowded market time.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to like build that frequency and so that people get repeatedly exposed to the game and they're like, oh, how game are you? Keeps top of mind, keeps top of mind. So if they see it on Kickstarter, they're going to be like, hey, I know this game. I'm familiar with this game. I know how it plays. This is cool. Back it. So that makes a lot of sense from like a marketing standpoint for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I certainly wouldn't say the approach we took was the best. In hindsight, I would have been a bit more targeted. I would have probably found more of a marketing machine that I could have put in place and just kind of pushed a button and rolled it out. We'd done our Facebook marketing in particular, our testing, and a lot of what I'd read, people were saying build your email list first, and I think that's great advice. And if there's any possible way of doing that, then do that. We didn't quite get into our stride of doing that and getting results. So I was spending a lot of money on Facebook ads to get people to our Facebook page or to like this or comment or sign up. We had some early access questions. So we had 10 questions put together, and because ours is a question and answer game, we had 10 questions as samples we put together that people could sign up for. And we did that for about 7 or 8 months before our launch. And so that was a key focus that we were trying to get engagement on. And we did, but only, 100 or so from memory. But it cost us a lot of money to keep testing our ads, and we got some reasonable conversion rates, but it just kind of got me to the end where I thought, if I'm going to spend $2 or $3 or $4 per lead that accesses the games, the cards in the beginning, then how many of those am I going to convert on the actual Kickstarter at the day? And I thought, well, if I converted 1 in 10, which would normally be a pretty good result, then it's costing me $20, $30, $40 per conversion to Kickstarter in the end from that early mailing list. So I decided to stop doing that approach, and I thought, well, I'll put the money into the physical campaign when the time comes and spend that same, $30, $40, and hopefully I'd get 2, 3, 5 or more people through Facebook for the time when they could actually take action on the ad. So, we certainly didn't crack the formula of getting our database beforehand, but I think if anyone can, then that's probably a much smarter way to do it.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of difference too, like what the price of your game is, right? Like if on the back end you're seeing, hey, I'm paying $20 for these leads, and then my game is $20, then it doesn't make financial sense in the long run for the game too.
Yeah, correct.
All right, yeah. So out of all the things that you were doing here, going to conventions, building a following, reaching out to reviews, running some ads during your launch period, and all this, like, what do you think was kind of the most effective method to just get the word out about your game?
Good question. Look, probably in the end, Facebook saved the day in terms of, the friends and supporters we had that were able to put out messages. So it wasn't through pure effectiveness. It was just quite a broad reach. We did do some ads, Facebook ad targeted specifically to America that ended up, I couldn't actively track through the way Kickstarter did things at the time, how effective they were or weren't. So there is a possibility that did work though, in the US. So we targeted 2 states. I think we did or not even states. We did Los Angeles and New York, thinking that they were the 2 kind of more active markets and largely oversaturated with messages. Oh, that's right. No, we did a third as well. We picked, I think, Kansas, so that we had 2 very big active kind of dynamic markets, and we had Kansas as well as still quite a substantial place, but we thought maybe they're not bombarded with as many messages and ads and things like that. So we ran those campaigns, and we also cheekily, this didn't seem to pay off, but we ran a very targeted campaign to Kickstarter employees. And the purpose of that was to try and get an extra mention or be put up higher on one of the lists. I forget what they're called, but one of their, like product of the day kind of things. So we did, so we did some ads there where you can, target it right down to employees of certain companies, and we thought it was a little bit of scattergun. But if I send it to, in theory, to everyone that works and is on Facebook from Kickstarter, then people might go, oh, we're seeing this "How game are you" everywhere, and then if they come across our listing or product, you never know, we might get a mention. So we did have a couple of bumps through Kickstarter, so I don't know if that little Facebook thing helped or not, but I guess there were lots of little things like that we were trying just to see. But in the end, it's really hard to know which worked and which didn't from the basic tracking that was available.
Got it. Okay. Well, no, it was good to hear about how kind of Facebook saved the day in the way that your friends and family were able to just expand your reach. Pretty much every person who shared probably has 2,000-3,000 friends. That's more and more and more eyeballs for your game.
Yes, exactly. But if we found I guess a larger scale one other than just advertising, then that would have been well worth looking into as well.
Got it. Well, thank you for coming on the show and sharing with us all these insights about your campaign, about the marketing that you did, Bradley. I know that people are going to really love to, just listen to what you have to say about this. Before we go, though, what's kind of next for you? Are you launching the second version, the money game of this now, or are you continuing to push How Game Are You? What's kind of in the horizon?
Yeah, sure. Look, the money game's still there. I've developed another product as well. This is just a broad marketing product. So, sorry, not broad marketing. It's a broad market product. So it'll be 150 questions in a deck of cards, and all of our games are around the theme of real life questions. So rather than a kind of Cards Against Humanity style fill in the blank or have a laugh, ours are more real life questions, just to consider about life or your views on something. And so the couple's intimacy one talks specifically about their relationship and their views on the world, and what they're thinking about their lives together and how they'd like to improve that. So the new game, it'll just be a deck rather than a board, and the other things in it. The new one will be just general questions that couples, friends, half a dozen people, on a road trip or a weekend away in the cabin, they can just ask each other and get more insight into each other and what they're doing. Kind of icebreakers on steroids, I guess. So that game is coming out very soon. We're calling that the original edition because it'll be the first of that style just in a deck of cards. Just waiting on samples, literally, that should have arrived 2 weeks ago. But when they do arrive and I can sign off on those, then I'll be launching those. That won't be on Kickstarter. I've moved most of my marketing now over to Amazon. So I sell in Amazon in US and Amazon Australia. And the money game is there as well, as I've been learning different things with the relationship one, and I get some more understanding from this new card deck version. Well, then I'll apply the best of that to the money game, because ultimately the money game was the closest to my heart in the beginning, and I know it can create such amazing change in people's kind of financial lives. So that's what I'd definitely like to get out there. And I won't do a Kickstarter on that either, now that I've kind of understood the process. And my main thing, as I said, was trying to understand acceptability for the game. But I'll probably look to target, jointly with a bank or some other financial institution, or maybe a financial planner, a very big one, and do some kind of cross-promotional launch with them where they can give the game out as a gift to their people rather than a Christmas gift or end of financial year. And I'll tie that into the marketing launch. So, yeah, plenty to do, plenty ahead.
Yeah, that sounds like a really busy few months for you.
It definitely will be.
Yeah, so if listeners are interested in finding out more about any of these different projects that you're working on, where should they find you?
Yeah, look, our main website is just howgameareyou.com. Obviously, we're on Facebook as well under the same name, so you can find us there. If there's a particular thing that I said that you want more explanation on, I mean, hopefully I won't get bombarded, but I'm very happy to kind of pay back on the people that help me with stuff. So they can always email me, which is Bradley, BRADLEY, @howgameareyou.com. And, if I can give some brief tips or something, if it helped them, then I'm more than happy to do that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Bradley.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good luck. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Board Game Marketing Podcast. For daily tips and advice, find us in the Board Game Marketing group on Facebook. See you next week.